This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Radar, and I'm so thrilled to be speaking with Chris Diamantopoulos about Mrs. Davis and his other projects. How are you, Chris?
I'm good, Abe. How you doing today?
Good, good. You've answered my first question already, which is the fact that you are not actually Australian. I was interested to hear you, and I thought maybe that's just sort of a part of the, personality. You always play all these crazy Americans. What was it like putting on this accent?
Well, I love keeping you on your toes, Abe. It's funny. One of the NBC execs, one of the Peacock execs, is Australian, and she asked Betty. I wasn't at one of the screenings, and she said, "What part of Australia is he from?" And Betty said, "He's from Toronto." So that's pretty nice. I had a ball. I love the character. I love the show. I working with Betty and Jake and getting to work on Tara and Damon's material really is it's a career highlight for me. And the characters right in the wheelhouse of some of my favorite things that I get to do. Some great action sequences, some terrific comedy. And then, the notion of the Australian was kind of a last minute thing that Damon had sort of asked about. I thought about a regionalism and we thought, it can't just be Australian. It's got to be like Russell Crowe meets all of the Hemsworth family blended up and then like cinematically spewed out. It had to be like epic Australian, and that certainly made it great fun to play in.
I think it also sort of sums up the kind of roles you've had in the past. Reminds me a little bit of the agent you played in Made for Love, who I think was took himself very seriously, but there would have been an extra sort of drama if he had this accent. And I think that somehow the world of Made for Love could have given away to the world of Mrs. Davis. In the many roles you've had in your past, it's possible those two worlds could be linked.
It's always fun to borrow from stuff that's worked and find a new way to make it relevant. It's fun to find new things, collaborating with fresh collaborators. It's a real blast. I love what I do, and I still can't believe that I really get a chance to do it as often as I do. I'm really grateful.
What can you share about just being involved in the action sequences in Mrs. Davis? Was that fun to shoot?
It was great. Great fun to shoot. There's a sequence in the second episode that we shot in downtown LA on a rooftop in the middle of the night, and oh man, that was it's funny. I went into it. I seem to forget sometimes that I'm not 25 years old. So holding an actor by their ankles, dangling over a 10-story building, seemed like it made perfect sense until the next morning I woke up and I couldn't use my hands because, yes, he was rigged, of course, but I wasn't going to let go. And I realized, oh, yeah, I'm 47. But I do love doing the action sequences, and I do them as often as I can. I'm in Northern Canada right now shooting a new show for Amazon called The Sticky that stars Margot Martindale and is being produced by the great Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's going to be in it with us. She's actually coming this week. And I've been doing a ton of action sequences here, running through the forest, getting punched, giving punches, shooting, jumping, climbing. And I wake up every morning and wonder how I'm going to get out of bed. But, it's the desire, the will, and the joy of the job that definitely gets me out.
Margot also, of course, is in Mrs. Davis, but I don't think you share that you inhabit some slightly different pieces of that universe.
That's right. And she's just terrific. And it's funny, we've worked together three times now. This is the first time we're actually in scenes together, and we're in the whole show together. But we did a movie for Michael Ian Black years ago with Isla Fisher and Jason Biggs. Wedding Days is what it was called. We weren't in any scenes together in that one. And then, of course, Mrs. Davis, which she's just terrific. I mean, Margot's great in everything she's in. And Mrs. Davis is no exception. And The Sticky, wow, man. I mean, I'm so excited for the world to see this because I think it's breaking the genre a little bit because it's a half hour. It's definitely funny, but it's bent and it's dark and it's just fabulous.
He's in good company with Mrs. Davis, which I think is also definitely, breaking a genre. I think it's hard to describe what that would be. And I enjoyed talking to Damon and Tara about their own backgrounds. And one thing Damon said is the reason that a lot of people are put in boxes, whether it's as comedy writers or excuse me, comedy writers or procedural writers, that's what they've always done. And it's very interesting when you see what happens when you pair somebody together with someone else, and they're known for completely separate things. Did you have any expectations based on Damon and Tara and knowing their previous work?
Look, I have been a fan of Damon's for a very, very long time. It's funny, randomly, he came up on set. I was shooting The Boys in the Boat that George Clooney was directing, and Damon's name came up with regard to social media and what some of the pitfalls of social media could be. And we ended up, George and I, in a huge conversation just about filmmakers and the brand of filmmaking, writers, and the brand that they can create by virtue of the creation of their universes. And Damon is sort of, at the top of the list of creators, writers, producers, universes that I've always wanted to be a part of, because I'm such a voracious devourer as an audience member of the universes that he creates. So when I heard that it was Damon pairing up with Tara, I just thought it's that kind of disparate but complementary energy that I was looking forward to, because I certainly think that it's that unity and that alchemy that allowed someone like me to jump in and use some of the elements, characteristics, or skill set that I have to sort of bring JQ to life.
Do you have an opinion on AI, and has that changed since starting this show?
I mean, everybody's, doomsday predicting. I mean, I think certainly in our industry, anytime technology has been introduced, first people scoff and then they freak out. There'll never be talking pictures. Color, hogwash. Um, I think AI and any technological advancements we have, certainly in our industry, will ultimately find a way to be another color in our palette of storytelling. I just think as long as humans are the ones watching the stories, then there has to be a human element to the story that's being told. That doesn't mean that it can't be influenced, impacted, or helped by virtue of a technology. I think that we've seen that to great effect. Will it be misused or overused, sometimes to ill effect? Yeah, probably, until we sort of figure out how to balance it. People scoffed at 35 millimeter film going away, and they said it's the death of cinema. You could say that, or you could say that there have been some phenomenal films made with the new technology. I tend to say, despite the fact that technology is at the peak, at least what we know of, the peak of where it's ever been in human civilization, the human experience hasn't changed, and I don't think will at all. We're all the same as we were back when Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus were warning us of the same shit that we're dealing with right now. So, you have two ears and one mouth. Use them in the correct proportion.
And maybe it won't look like, all wearing earpieces and snapping cell phones in half. Might be a little bit more subtle than that.
I mean, listen, you walk around the street right now with people walking around, walking down the street, looking at their phones and having their phones look at them. And it's pretty meta. I think that Damon and Tara were prescient with regard to the subject matter. And, certain jobs they land on our screens right on time, and other jobs maybe come a little too early or too late. I did a great show for Amazon a few years ago called The Good Girls Revolt, and it was terrific. Really, really well-drawn characters and a timely discussion, but it was just a bit too early, and so it didn't have the fair shot that it most rightly deserved, which is a shame. But I think Mrs. Davis hit smack dab in the middle of where it needs to be, so it's very exciting.
I always think of another show when it comes to technology and you, and that's Silicon Valley, and especially about how the most intense technical work can be undone by something as simple as putting a bottle of alcohol on the backspace key.
Not alcohol, tres comas. Okay, it was very specific. I think that it was the bottle shape and the weight of that, but it was just the perfect confluence of idiocy. Oh man, what a joy that was to work with those guys, and certainly with the great Alec Berg and Mike Judge. I mean, as an actor, when you're given an opportunity to show up and deliver that material, you just you let what's on the page come forth and you just can't lose. So I've been very, very lucky.
I don't think there's a show that does a better job of having an entire arc every episode of everything's going great, it's going to be wonderful, it's all completely destroyed, and it's actually fine again. And that's all within the span of half an hour every single episode, which was pretty impressive.
It's beyond impressive because I think it's some of the finest television writing I'd ever seen. And it's certainly one of the funniest shows I think ever produced. It took a mundane subject matter, a subject matter that wasn't necessarily ubiquitous. It brought it to the forefront. Now everyone, the only thing everyone's talking about is VCs and startups and all this shit. But before Silicon Valley, it wasn't part of the common nomenclature. I think it was brilliant, and I was really, really pleased to be a part of it.
You were also part of another show that I really enjoyed, which I guess it got 5 seasons, which isn't a bad run, but I wish it was, a little more prominent, and that's Episodes.
Oh, what a great show, man! You've got not because I'm on the show, but you've got great taste because Jeffrey Clarick and David Crane are about as good writers as you can find. And the interesting thing about that show, and you wouldn't know it because it's produced so beautifully and it's acted so well. Every single line, every single beat, the punctuation, it's all scripted. So, I mean, this is a testament to Mr. LeBlanc and how well he delivers scripted lines. When I watched the show in season 1 as an audience member, just obsessed with it because it was such a beautiful and cringeworthy peek into our industry, I assumed naturally that all of them, Tamsin, Matt, that they were all improvising like 80 or 90% because it's so fluid. And even his his guttural utterances, they were all scripted. As a matter of fact, the day that I arrived for our table read, I bumped into Matt at the airport at Heathrow, and he said, "Are you ready for the table read tomorrow?" And I thought it was an odd question because I've done table reads before as an actor. You typically show up, you've got your script, everyone's sitting around a big table, and you read the script. It's nothing really to prepare for. I've read the scripts or whatever. And I said as much to him, and he said, no. We're reading and basically performing the entire season for the brass. So you better know your stuff. And, at first I thought he was messing with me, but I stayed up all night reading every single script inside out and backwards. And my character had some pretty long, terrifically, crazy monologue-like diatribes about the future of the industry. And I'm really glad that he told me that because when I got there, it was effectively a quasi-performance of the material because Jeffrey and David had the time to write it all out. And they heard it very, very musically. It had the rhythm of the dialogue was very, very specific. And I will tell you, man, to an actor, not a single person diverged from the script. And what we did in the table read, what was in the script, that's what ended up on screen. And that's why it was so lovely.
Very interesting to know. I want to ask you about one more role of yours, which I was speaking out recently with Adam Scott, and that was the Twilight Zone episode that you got to star in. That's another underrated reboot. I think that had some really good, chilling episodes, and especially yours because I'm always curious how you shoot a scene, an extended scene like that, where you're on a plane, it's very darkly lit, and there's this real foreboding sense of terror. Nothing's actually happening, but what could be happening is pretty scary.
It was quite brilliant. I have to say, I have a real fondness for Adam Scott. What a terrific collaborator, an excellent presence on set. And for as long as he's been doing it, as much wisdom as he's gained, he's so present and so warm. And being stuck in a fuselage for 2.5 weeks with a bunch of actors and extras and crew, that could have been sort of the perfect recipe for everybody losing their shit. And it really wasn't. We were engaged by the storytelling. I mean, look, when I was a kid, the first episode of Twilight Zone that I ever saw was the gargoyle on the wing. That was the one. And I remember that thing freaking the shit out of me. And I could never reconcile, like, what the hell? What wasn't that? Like, it was a gremlin. It was what was it? It really freaked me out. And then I remember in the later iteration with John Lithgow, right? In the movie. So I remember both of them really, really scaring me. And how funny that years later I would be the demon on the wing. I effectively was. I mean, I was the demon on his shoulder that ended up taking the plane down. I had a great time. I love playing roles like that. Oh, that was great fun.
Well, it's really fun to get to revisit all these and hear that these projects that I really enjoy you in, that there's so much more to them to unpack. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more of Mrs. Davis and everything else. Thank you, Chris, for taking a few minutes to be with me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was a delightful conversation. Thanks for taking the time.